Well, all right, shall we dive in?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Do we still have the same title? Let's see. Yeah, no, we changed it. Originally it was public goods, but we're like, oh, public goods as a title is kind of dead. So, I mean, that's kind of my first question here. Like, should we still be using the term public goods? If not, like, what should we call it instead?
How many of you here understand or have heard the word public goods? Raise your hand. Okay, how many of you have heard about Gitcoin or Octant? Oh, we're speaking to our audience,
yeah,
so
right?
I love this. Well, so I feel like we can retire the word public goods because what isn't a public good? I think people can justify and go to any means about this. We had our head of impact actually tweet about this the other day, like, hey, can you prove that whatever you're building is not what is not a public good? And so just anything can be a public good, right? This talk is a public good for people that are here maybe, and if it's online and accessible, and so it becomes a little bit vague. And then at Octant, we realized, because we initially started off funding public goods, and then over the different funding rounds that we've done, realized that it's too broad a category, and it's not really easy to compare if you're trying to understand what the impact has been of funding a lot of projects, because if you're going to compare a project that's very technical, like Protocol Guild, helping build Ethereum and grow Ethereum, versus like a community onboarding project, like how do you do that? It's like comparing apples and oranges. And so, yeah, I think we can probably retire the term.
It's gotta go. It's officially dead, guys. Public goods as a term is officially dead. So what do we want to call it instead? What is the name? Are we coining it here? What is the name?
Damn, put me on the spot.
Right, put you on the spot here.
Impactful projects, I don't know. I think we could be more specific. Like running different, if you're running a grants round, be more specific. Is it for content? Is it for technical research? Is it for development? Is it for visibility, marketing? Like call it what it is instead of being super broad about it.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, exactly. And I kind of like that. I want to know, are grants still relevant? And is it just free money? Just completely useless free money for people? Give it to anyone. Oh, hey, I have X thing that I want to do and put it up my butt. I don't know. Put it on Twitter. I don't know. Like, who knows? Is it useless or not?
No. There have been over $1.2 billion given out in grants funding over the last 5 years. That's a lot of money. A lot of internet money, but grants aren't dead. I think, if anything, grants programs are getting better, and the way we allocate funding is getting better, because for a lot of folks and for a lot of programs that are deploying capital initially, and this is part of, so at Octant, we have invested a lot into grants research, impact research, and really getting better at how do you give out money, how do you make your ecosystem grow through all these fun things. And every program still, like every ecosystem still has a grants program. How they run it is different, how they've defined it is different, but we're seeing the fruits of it in really, really good ecosystems. And yeah, I think grants are still very much alive and still exist, just in different formats and forms.
Yeah, it does. So I'm saying, like, what does sustainability, like, long term, like, actually look like in a grants ecosystem?
That's a really good question. And I think we got it. Hold on, sorry. Up the hot water down because we're getting into it. This is something we think about a lot at Octant, because it's like, how do you, and for context, for those of you who don't know, we have been fully sustainably funded through staking rewards. We have run 8 different grants rounds. Our most recent one is focused on Ethereum. Our last one was focused on climate projects. And we have run a lot of different funding experiments and governance experiments. And I'd say sustainability is really important because your ecosystem growth should not come at the cost of budget reducing. Like, what does that mean? So we've seen a lot of budget cuts in marketing, in community, in a lot of different aspects, and it's because suddenly when the market's down, you're like, oh shit, excuse my language. I don't know, can I say shit?
You can say whatever. It's going on crypto Twitter. You can do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah, so you have a lot of execs essentially behind the scenes being like, oh wait, like budgets are going down. How can we still grow? And now you've got different incentives. And so that shouldn't happen. You shouldn't have builders who are so worried because they can't sustain themselves because, you know, again, like funding has gone down. Yeah. And so I think in an ideal world, you're growing your program and you are growing your ecosystem in a way that is sustainable. And that's part of what we've been thinking about, like, how do you solve that problem? And our solution to that was building infra for that, right? So you use DeFi. The way that we've been able to do this over the last couple of years and the way we've been able to grow, we think there's a model for other ecosystems to grow. And then from a builder perspective, if you've received a grant, I think sustainability would be not needing constant funding over time, figuring out how you can be financially, operationally, and just in different aspects keep growing or existing where if a program funding shut down, your project shouldn't be at stake in terms of existence. So that would be the ideal case. But I think to get there, we need a lot more layers of support. And so we ran a program last year, which was specifically for helping projects get sustainable, projects that had received grants funding, because we spoke to, we were one of the, we have funded the State of Web3 Grants report, and part of that was speaking to 14 different programs in the industry that are giving out grants. And the number one issue was, we give grants, the builder gets it, and then they go on to the next ecosystem. So my question was, okay, but why? Have you given them marketing support? Have you given them partnership support? Have you really tried to understand what their challenges were and what their incentives were to stay? It's not just about financial support. There's a lot of other things that come into play. And then have you built systems that they can be independent in terms of that? So I think that's the other part. And so I see a lot more programs that are more interested in wanting to be better in offering these different layers of support and growth. And I'd say, like, in an ideal world, your ecosystem funding doesn't have to decrease just because you've given out your funding, and there are ways that you're also supporting your builders and whoever's on it.
Yeah, so basically, like, you need magic internet money or Jose ain't loyal. That's what it is. Honestly, that's how it goes. You have to actually be offering support. So, I mean, what was your personal draw to, like, this whole entire thing of funding allocation, of actually doing this? Like, what was your personally brought you into this?
First of all, I think being a part of a project where it's not just a scam, that's definitely a positive. But overall, I think the impact and the effect that we're able to have, we've been able to fund some really, really great builders, and because of that, we're seeing a better industry as a whole. Like, there's so many projects thanks to who, we're just seeing Ethereum grow, we're seeing other ecosystems grow too, and then being able to have an impact in terms of decision making when it comes to the community. Like with Octant rounds, what I love is that our community can vote in how they want to allocate and how this big pool of funding is supposed to go. It's not 5 people behind a screen thinking, hey, this is where the money should go. And so I think that is really cool. And then, just kind of trying to help other ecosystems do that too. I think like that's been really cool to see, is just like how genuinely the team internally wants to help see Ethereum thrive. And and instead of just like talking about it, like doing the work, there's nothing more legit than having 8 funding rounds where Protocol Guild gets the most amount of funding every 3 months. So I think like that's been walking the walk.
Yeah, so I mean, so if people want to actually get funding, like, what does a good proposal look like in your mind?
Okay, and I want to ask, like, how many of you have applied to a grants application? And how many of you have found that process really annoying? Yeah, I thought so. So now, from the reviewer's perspective, when you have hundreds of applications, you have a short amount of time, what you're looking for is quality, legitimacy, and then you're thinking, how do I also not just sometimes have the same names get funded again? What are the new projects that are maybe not, that haven't been along for as long, but are still really great, right? So there's like a bunch of different challenges you have. And a lot of times I'd say, like, any markers of credibility are really good. There are a lot of projects where they say they're doing all these things, but if you go to verifiable proofs, there really isn't much. And so I'd say, like, try to, wherever you are regionally, try to start connecting with people, share your project. You really have to be, if you're a builder, get the word out there, push yourself out there. And a big focus of that is like in person and online. And then show proof of what you've done. Anything that is counted towards showing that, hey, like, you can actually do things in a timely manner and get to it. I think that would be really good. If you're gonna use ChatGPT, use it smartly. Anyone who's read a lot of applications can clear, like, it takes me like 30 seconds to look at it and be like, okay, I wish it was a person writing. So use it smartly, use it like an editor instead of having constantly like the same slop that like 20 other projects are probably using. So it becomes tougher to and I will say, like, I know a lot of people say, like, don't use the M dash. I love my M dash, but
they're the best. I love it. M dash, N dash, like, all good.
Right.
I know, it's kind of ruined it for me. I'm like, why are we ruining for each other online? Like, seriously, like. But it's, I mean, the problem is it does look so obvious. Like, you see the rest of it and you kind of paint that picture.
I hate that I have to look at if my writing genuinely has M dash, which a lot of times it does, and I have to like cut it down to be like, yo, I wrote it as a person, not just because. And no shame to using AI editors. I think we should all know how to use them in the world that we're moving towards, but just using it smartly, I think, is a really good distinction. And then GitHub profiles, repos, like anything that, depending on what kind of grant you're also applying to. If it's a marketing grant, like put up your videos and posts and show your traction and anything that can show the growth results, not just what you want to build, but what have you built before? What kind of results did you see? Did people use it? I think those are things that really help the person reviewing understand why it's valuable to give you the funding as compared to all the others that are competing with you.
Yeah, I'm like wondering, like, how does a good marketer like actually benefit from writing grants? Like,
I love this. So I'm a marketer. I had marketing at Octant, and we have run a few different creator and community rounds, specifically focused on visibility and growing awareness. And I feel like this is when marketers ignore grants. I think it's a very big missed opportunity because you can run so many different growth like experiments, fund growing creators. You don't always have to target. Like there were a lot of conversations about KOLs in the last round. Even reputation platforms can unfortunately be gamed. Like if it's 20 of us and we know each other and we're like, hey, like if you join this Telegram group and we can give each other reputation scores, that's a problem. So unfortunately that is happening. But at the same time, I think if you can move out of that, grants can be a really good way. We ran a lot of experiments where we funded communities that were not the traditional, I'd say like crypto Twitter lit, but they were able to get hundreds of people in person to events and help them learn about Octant. And so that was cool, being able to take experiments in terms of the kinds of events, the kinds of online content campaigns that we wanted to run. And so, yeah, I think there's like a lot that you can do, and be specific. If you want to see more video, go run a video grants round. If you want to see more long form content, maybe you do that. But there's not just the final grantees, but even the application cycle can be a whole marketing exercise. The reviewing process, who gets to get the grants, and then even after, like don't just think about the end result. Every single part of it gets to help you get more visibility with that exact audience, and I think like that in itself is also a win.
yeah, we were talking like kind of before this about like ethos and everything like that. There actually is a group that does kind of game the system. So yeah, not wrong here. But what's your favorite experiment that like you've run so far? Because you said you do so much experimenting. Like what's your favorite one? And like actually maybe also is your least favorite. What's the most biggest dumpster fire you had to deal with? Yeah.
I don't know if it counts as an experiment, but I remember there's a creator called Yinka. He's one of my favorite creators when it comes to video and short form content. I remember when we first gave him a grant, he had like maybe less than 1,000 followers, but his videos were excellent. We've given he's received 2 different grants from us for different, when we were in V1, just talking about what Octant is, and now that we're building infra and moving towards a different audience, speaking more about that. And the kind of traction in his profile and visibility, and he's now like a lead DevRel at Million, I believe. Still creating incredible content, but we've actually been one of the first ones to to be like, hey, we want to fund this creator and we want to see what it's going to lead to, even if no one else has done it. And we've seen their career trajectory and just like the growth in the audience over time, and that's been really cool. And then seeing other projects jump on to wanting to work with the same creators has been really cool. A design hackathon that we funded as well. This was like earlier this year, so we had decided to fund it like couple months ago, end of last year, and like seeing how many designers were like, hey, there's no program for us. We want to share more about learning about how to improve grants programs, and like how do you even like communicate that to people who aren't from the industry. So yeah, those are probably 2 of my favorites. Least favorite.
Yeah, the bit about design and everything is so real. Like I feel like I lean on the design department to hype a lot, like in creative a lot. And I honestly, as a marketer as well, like I've always found that really hard to be expected to do all of that yourself. I really feel like designers, like they need their own conferences like this. They need their own on-chain growth. They need on-chain designs. What would it be? On-chain design?
Yeah, well, we didn't even have marketing events up until like a couple, I'd say like, this is probably the 4th one that I've been to in the last year and a half, but we weren't talking about marketing as much in the past, right? And like having a room full of marketers and growth experts who are like, hey, wait, I actually want to learn from other folks instead of just a panel and a...
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to give a shout out and some flowers here to Claire. Claire was not here, but like GTM Con at DevCon, I think honestly was one of the first ones, in my opinion, to really like take off and actually kind of start this entire meta of marketing really at the front of our industry. So I think that's always just really cool, and credit to her for that. All right, so I'm going to ask you a question again. It's a fun one. What problems do you think need to be addressed in crypto?
Take a shot every time I say sustainability. But I think it's probably one of the biggest ones. And I say that because speaking to decision makers behind the scenes, where you're seeing the effect of all of these budgets being cut down. And I think we speak about sustainability for projects, but not about ecosystems. So I think, yeah, having that is probably one of the biggest ones. And then other problems, I'd say the adoption part, right? Instead of just talking about the tech we're building, how can that tech help solve problems? How can you get people using, like, I don't know what my apps are built on a lot of times on my phone, right? But how can we get to crypto adoption without having to constantly talk about the cool tech features? And I think that happens when we're solving problems. So I hope we get to that stage where we get to see, a lot more of that, like usage, adoption. And I think as we're growing as an industry, we're going to see that. Flowers to other ecosystems like Solana that have really focused on the app usage part. I think we're going to see more of that in Ethereum because there's a lot of work that's currently being done by again, the Ethereum Foundation and a lot of the different projects that they're funding that is going to lead to that adoption with a focus on younger builders and support layers too. So yeah, I think that's probably the bigger one.
You honestly nailed it with answering, like mentioning Ethereum, because you were recently on a panel with Vitalik at Protocolberg, which is wild. So for people in the audience who don't know, can you explain DACC?
DAC? Yeah.
DAC, oh, whoops, whoops. Whoops.
Yeah, of course. It was a cool panel where I was speaking about Solana's marketing in a certain part of it. But DAC is basically positively building tech. So tech acceleration in a positive, intentional, thoughtful way. That's literally what it is. If you are building positive tech, you are part of the DAC movement. Yeah. And that was my biggest takeaway too from that event, because I wasn't sure what it meant as much before, but at the end of the day, I think that was the biggest unlock. Like, oh wait, like we're all building for DAC, and if we're building towards a better world.
Oh my God, I love that. Wow. Oh my gosh, wow. Okay, that was powerful. Okay, so what is next in funding and grants? Like, what do we see happening? Are more people going to start participating? Are more people going to like? What do you see?
I think what I'm most excited about, and again, I'm sorry for shilling. I love what we're building, but it's like we like one, cracking the sustainability aspect, like having different, not just like grant programs run on V2 and being able to run different experiments, but being able to see marketers run experiments and being able to do that sustainably. I think being able to be in a place where not only will you have communities being part of decision making, but also bringing more utility to the token. Like there's a lot of different aspects that I'm excited about for Octant specifically, and the different ways that we're tackling it too. I think that's going to be really exciting. And then I think we're reaching a phase where, from the grants perspective, and again, this is because we've done so much work with different grants operators and managers, like seeing how these programs are evolving, because now we're going to see better programs with more support. And a lot of times builders have this issue where they'll receive grants, but there's not as much VC support, right? So there's so many programs that are trying to fix those aspects. And I think that's going to be really exciting, because we will, over time, we just need enough time to be able to see the success stories. It's not going to happen in a day or two or a couple months, but I think we're going to be in a much better place by the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the problem with the space sometimes, is the attention span is so short. Sometimes it's a really good thing if you make a snafu of some type, people are going to forget in a week. But in other ways, like, And I kind of, for you, like in general, like kind of a general marketing question, marketer to marketer, like, what's the next meta in your mind? Or what you're most excited about?
Actual usage. More than that, and I think we'll see the results. Like, I'm tired of seeing, I'm sorry, please don't hate, no hate to Laudio, but I was sick of seeing my timeline be flooded by people that are trying to game scorecards and leaderboards with the same slop. It's so terrible. Like, I did not go to Twitter to just see the same tweet over and over and over. It is terrible for the timeline and for like internet usage as a whole. So I hope we don't see that. And I think we've seen that as a result because of how overdone it was. I'm sure it's a great result in campaign, and I'm sure people who participated, like, take your bags. But at the same time, like, people don't want to be sold to. I think that's just the end of it.
Yeah, that's honestly very fair. People don't want to be sold to. And I mean, I love a good copy pasta. I find that to be fun, sarcastic, witty, but it's like, okay, you're going to be doing the same slop over and over again. Like, you don't know about that. Oh my gosh, I think we're like almost at time.
Any questions?
Yeah, any questions?
No, we answered them all.
No, it's good. I love this is coming to the forefront. I feel like you guys have done a really good job. Like, not just be self-congratulatory on that for you, but like, really good job. Yes, you have a question. Question.
the funding cycle. When you don't have to worry as a program manager about the funding cycle, when it is regenerative and it is sustainable, you can help your grantees a lot better, right? Because if you don't have to worry about funding, you can now think about who are the experts and mentors and programs I can build and run and everything else that I can bring for the grantee specifically. And then, I think that's like the first thing that I would change. Depends on what kind of project you're running as well, right? Because some projects, like there's 3 different profiles of builders. There's like the early stage ones that have not received funding and they are just getting started. There's folks who've received 1 or 2 grants and they're struggling to get to like the stage of like say more than like 1,000, whatever, like that like 10 to 100 jump. And then there's the third one, which is like experienced founders who know how to raise money and who have already scaled and have had success. And so every single profile has a different kind of need. And based on geography as well, like you'll see emerging markets where you have fantastic builders and adoption, but lack of funding. And then you have founders who are in geographies with abundance in funding, but not as many, like they're struggling with the adoption side. And so I think like it depends. It has to be a little bit more specific. And I think even with the way you design your programs, you need to figure out who's in them, what kind of value will they receive, and then what can you create so that the experienced builders should not be in a program, like they can be, but it's just more fruitful to have a similar profile of builders to get the most value and for them to be able to keep coming back and to be able to grow from that. So I would say like that's other.
Word, I think we're at time. Also, I was going to say, milady.
All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you, everybody.